Wow. Welcome.
Wow.
Welcome back to
Welcome.
the Footnotes podcast with June and Paul. We are June and Paul. This is number 13. We're coming to you live from London and Hamilton, just as usual. We got a very exciting episode today, as always. We've been doing some stuff. We have a viewer, which is fascinating.
We have a viewer?
I hope it's not you, June, but anyway, let's begin. What's been going on in your week, June?
My week, it's been long. I'll say this again, but I never remember what's happened in the week. Maybe my short-term memory is just terrible. But the main thing I've been focusing on is to try to get better. I want to be better.
Wow, it's very vague, June.
That mindset's kind of been drilled into me a little bit.
Okay.
So I think it's been a number of things. So I gave you my how I became Christian rant last week, and it was very long and maybe undecipherable.
Yes.
But if there's one outcome of like the previous week, it's the idea that like I want to be better for myself in like all the areas of my life, and that's always been a goal. That's always been a goal that you and I shared for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But so like a recommitment to that goal and why it's important.
So what caused this resurgence?
So I think the number one factor was I was telling you about last week was my two marijuana highs that led to some pretty spiritual experiences that led me to kind of reconnect with the Christian story and my faith. Because that's been, let's say, non-existent for the better part of the last 4 years. And the second thing is, I've been really in Raptors play basketball this season. And Kawhi Leonard, who is a new Toronto Raptor, he is arguably like at his peak, one of the top 3 players of the NBA, right? And I love just tracking the stories, and it seems like this season, each one of the 15 players on the roster have like something to prove. They all have something and nouns of like a very long season and a very long year. And a part of me was always like, June, like, why do you like basketball so much? You're spending so much time watching these games, and this is like not related to your career. You should just stop. But something clicked like this week when I was watching basketball, because it said like something something in my head was like, no, June, like you actually really love this. Like you love basketball. You love all the personalities around it. You love like playing basketball. And like I think you should pursue that more. That was kind of my inner dialogue.
You're inspired.
Yeah, so I started playing. I think I played basketball like 4 times over the past a week and a half, right?
Wow.
And so I want to incorporate it more into my life. Like, although I know I'm not going to be an NBA star anytime soon, I think there's a lot you can learn from it, and good that will come out from pursuing things like that you're really into and that you really like.
Right. I think you can dunk. I think you can get to the point where you can dunk, June. You got the height for it.
Yeah, like me, like thinking the vertical to like dunk on be insane. I don't know if my like real joints can support it.
Well, you're a one dunk wonder.
Just yeah, it can be a
it can be a wonder. You're good.
Yeah. Or like just to start off the session, and then I'll be like, all right, that was it for me. I'm
step out.
Yeah, but yeah, but just playing basketball, being in that zone, has been really good for me.
Okay.
I think so.
Tell me more about why basketball does that to you specifically. Why is it basketball and not something else?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very interesting question. Like, I'm sure if I had grown up watching soccer a little bit more, or maybe,
Mm.
yeah, maybe that would have changed it. Um, like, I grew up watching like Kobe Bryant and the Lakers, like when like the NBA Finals with my cousin Jeff, like sitting in front of those like those TVs are so old now, but
Yeah.
those TVs that are like actually 3D, like they're not just like flat screens. Those were a thing back then, and then we're just like sitting in front because the screens were basically the size. So I have some fond memories over that,
Hmm.
um, and just the feeling of it. Like soccer, I think my cardio can't keep up with soccer. Soccer, you have to run too much. Um, and basketball is just like such a easily accessible sport.
Yeah.
Like you have basketball courts everywhere you go, and it's so simple. You just need a ball and a net,
Mm.
and just just the way how like you feel powerful when you dribble the ball in your hand, right? It's like a substantial ball. Volleyball, I can't quite get the sets, and the ball's too small. Maybe like basketball, I just like the way I can just shape it and grip it in my long spider hands, right?
Right.
So there's something to it about that like engages my senses, like my history with it. And there's that challenge about it because I go to the basketball court and like there's so many people that are better than me, but I can also see myself getting better.
Mm.
And like some of those games and like actually just by playing good defense or because I've watched so much basketball, like I can have a good time with like other people. So like the challenge of it is like how it makes me feel is like what draws me towards it. And the NBA.
Mm.
That's the Toronto Raptors have a big part to play with it.
It's like this full package, right? Like you relate to it like personally. There's a personal level of engagement, but then there's also
Yeah.
this societal and maybe like bigger realm of engagement where you have idols to worship and you have
Yeah.
like a fan base to be a part of, and it's a huge.
Yeah.
So it's very
Yeah, no,
interesting.
that's exactly yeah. That's exactly right. Like and I don't know if I've told you this at some point, but I at some point last year I also felt the need to like that was like more competitive and
Hmm.
like that kind of masculine drive because like I noticed in myself like I'm a pretty like happy-go-lucky guy. Like I can be very passive and like just laugh things off. But there's also a side of me that can be like vicious, and I want to be like competitive at times,
Uh-huh.
and I felt like that side of me wasn't getting enough let's say airtime in
Mm.
the show of life, in the show of June's life.
Interesting. So
So I thought that basketball was a really great way to like engage that.
right, you're fueling your dunks, your shots with your
Yeah,
inner rain. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
that's
So
interesting because I've also been struggling with that as well. Like I felt like I'm generally calm and passive, I guess. And more recently, as I grow up, I feel like there's a part of me that isn't being expressed, and it's very angry and it's
mhm.
very physical and it's very combative, which is interesting. And the other day, I did a Brazilian jiu-jitsu course. Um, well, not a course, sorry, one class.
Oh,
I got to try it out, and that whole time I felt myself like being fully absorbed by the whole notion of it because I don't know, something about
yeah,
those movements and fighting someone or engaging in battle was very fulfilling, was very it made me feel very good. So that's something definitely that I want to keep pursuing. And I've always wondered why that part of me was there. Maybe it's like a genetic thing. Maybe it's innate. Because I know I've had that when I was younger as well, and I spent so much time and energy to temper that. I played golf because I wanted to kind of get
Yeah.
better at being patient and tempering that side of myself. But it's always there. It's always present.
I mean, let me give you like a cool evolutionary perspective on it, right?
Sure.
So, like human beings, like I've been listening to an audiobook, like the story of the human body. And so the early humans turned bipedal. And one of the things that being bipedal, like walking on two legs, allowed us to do is to hunt. And that's to like aim and to throw things accurately with our arms. Like no other species can do that because they like basically rely on all fours and they don't have the same like kind of tool making, like aiming capacities. A chimp might do that, but nowhere near the speed and accuracy of human beings. Like that's a very specific human trait. And so like that notion of aiming and shooting, especially for the purpose of hunting, and also doing that in a social manner is like very deeply ingrained within like our biology. And there's like an innate kind of joy to that. Like when you aim and shoot and like ball, like you have no idea why you're like cheering like crazy, but embedded in all those meanings is one layer is like that kind of primal hunting aspect. There's one hypothesis that says that our sports are a way of channeling, like sports developed essentially as a way of practicing like tribal group hunting. Like so like earlier forms of sports were like maybe much more violent, and it didn't use like, instead of balls, maybe they actually hurled rocks at other people, like you see in like Colosseum, right? You'd have like these kind of battles. I mean, there were actually human beings and like lives that paid the price of that. But in its evolution, you get more you get tamer sports, but ones that still engage with like the same degree of like ferocity and competition and cooperation, but without like a human life being
Right.
a cost in every game. So that would be my take on that.
Well, there's also sort of a price to pay for tamer sports, in my opinion, because
Of course.
like I feel like I'm not as satisfied, let's say, with playing frisbee. So frisbee is like a very non-contact, non-violent sport, at least in our leagues. And the whole idea of it is you focus on a disc and you throw the disc, and it's never about person to person. It's about person to disc. So there's no combative nature, and for some reason that's not as fulfilling to me as when you fight someone. And maybe I'm just barbaric. I don't know. You can call me out on this, but there's still a part of me that feels like there's still work to be done. After a frisbee game, I don't go home thinking, "Oh, that was the best thing ever. That just tickled me in all the right ways." I just feel tired in my legs because I've been running all day or running all game.
There's a great meme on Facebook. It's like a dude goes to the doctor and he's injured, and like, "Doc, help me, like I'm injured." And the doc says, "Oh, no," the doc's taking a history. So like, "Oh, how did you get injured?" And he's like, "Oh, playing ultimate frisbee." And then the doc's like, "Oh, so I'm assuming like no sexual activity either, right?" Like, so like just to add to your tamer.
Oh yeah.
I don't think I did him justice, but yeah, the point I think definitely applies. You're right. It's not as combative or as highly testosterone driven as other sports.
Yeah. So that's all to say. Well, I mean, if you go to the big leagues, it's intense. Like you can't, like, those people are masculine in their own sense. They're so athletic, so good at what they do. But at this level, you're not satisfying any testosterone-driven cravings. It doesn't help also that I basically play all the sports where I can't really let loose, like golf. Like, yeah, I go to a golf game, and the harder you hit, the worse it gets. So
Yeah.
that says something. Yeah, that makes it tough. I'll be honest.
Yeah, but it's like, yeah, to go back to basketball, it's like that kind of aggression and competitive drive can be really useful. But if you just only go in with that mindset without any skill, and you just, let's say, like, try to go in for a layup, like you'll get rejected or like you'll miss really badly
Yeah.
because you created that like anger, rage, like that like outflow of energy like at all. You haven't refined it. So like to refine that like into a craft and to like really use bursts of it, like channeling in the right way, is really difficult. So
Mm.
like I was like a few days ago, yesterday I was practicing like my shot in the gym, and then I was getting really into it. My heart rate was, I felt just at the optimal level where I like felt engaged, but like I wasn't overworked. And then like my shots were going in, and things were good, right? All my muscles felt engaged. And then I kind of noticed like, like if I really pay attention to like when I release my shot, it's kind of like, those games where you have the red bars on the side and like it's like moving around,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
then
yeah.
when you get to the green bar, you have to press it and then, you know, it lets go, right? So I think that's like actually somewhat akin to what's happening when I decide to release that ball. Like I'm kind of measuring with my senses, like all my senses, what my body's telling me, what my vision's telling me about like when do I let go, at what angle, and then I just make that decision at that one point, right?
Mm.
Um, and I feel like there can be like modifiers to that. So imagine like anger and rage is a modifier to that. So what like anger might do is like it can like it raises the power bar, right? Like it extends the like areas of red, and maybe you can use that to like shoot farther or something. I don't know, or dunk. But like it also makes the
Mm.
um, selector bar move faster. So there's an increased degree of difficulty that like you need to master
Mm.
if you want to integrate some of those drives. So like for all those reasons, and like yeah, and for me playing basketball that day was like a very meditative experience, right? I kind of get honed in the zone, like get really connected to my body, and the great thing about basketball is that you shoot, you see ball go in, like you get immediate feedback and gratification. I love that. So yeah, I think there's something to be said about kind of going with the flow of your body, just not trying to like contain it all the time, and to like release some of what your more basic drives into those kind of platforms,
Mm.
into those kind of channels.
Right. That's pretty important. I don't know. Have you been feeling like you've been repressing some of that, like especially with medical school, because you're on a busy schedule and now you have a whole bunch of other things to do. Now it's harder to find time to let go of those, or to be attuned to those basic needs. Um, yeah, like have you had any issues with that at all? I know I definitely have myself.
Mm-hmm. I mean, for me, I think the way I've been approaching my time has been very focused on my basic needs and things like that. So, like, as you know, like Mac is very flexible in terms of schedule. So, like, some of my peers have like just scheduled what those kind of, they call them horizontal electives or like shadowing sessions day in, day out. They're gunning for that competitive specialty. Like they're attending all the lectures. They don't want to miss anything. They're studying for all the exams.
Mm.
Like for me, like as much as people, like especially my mom, might tell me like that's the way to do medical school, like I despise that.
Okay, you despise
Yeah,
it. That's pretty strong. Yeah.
like a part of that is laziness, and I don't like I can never overestimate my own laziness, but like a part of it is that that's not the way to start this off. I feel like, and if you need to do things right, like max flexibility, I I think there are better ways to approach it. So the way I've been approaching it is like, okay, there's some very basic things in my life I don't work out like at this moment, like that will cause me a lot of suffering during residency and during my practice. It's like I've been watching some videos on like music production, and there's a lot of videos on YouTube now that kind of break down popular songs and how they're produced.
Mm-hmm.
And like the steps are like very common, like you beat or like some kind of bass line, right? Some kind of bass line that kind of like steadies and sets the pattern for the whole song. So, and the basses in the songs, like to make or like the basic needs in your life, right? The basic things that kind of set your rhythm and your tempo and from your day to day. So those things, like probably the most important thing is sleep. So like I've spent a lot of my first month like ordering gel foam padded like different inch size like mattresses, returning two of them, and then like going through like terrible sleep, like just trying to fix the sleep issue, and then experimenting with keto diet. Like, is there any diet that like can reliably make me feel like not like shit after I eat dinner? Because I used to get like pretty horribly depressed like some nights after dinner. It's always after dinner time for some reason, and I
Huh.
thought it had to like do with the food. So I got that figured out, and the third thing is like exercise. Like, how am I going to get my exercise, and how much of it do I need? So like I feel on establishing those basic things. So if when you establish the bases, you can get this kind of rhythm, right? And after you have the rhythm, then you can start kind of adding on and experimenting with like, different more, maybe you add more like different percussion noises, or maybe you add like a instrumental track,
Mm-hmm.
some kind of simple, but you still keep the simple. Example, like it was like I want to meet up with someone I haven't met up for a while, like once a week or something, or something like that, or I want to like play basketball after like one of my tutorial sessions once a week. Just simple things like that. And um, I'm trying to remember the original question, but it was about like how to find time for the
Basic needs. Basic.
basic needs, right? Like I before I would maybe in first year or second year, like the basic needs came as an afterthought to like career or studies or anything else. But now I've like kind of flipped that model around. Like, no, the basic needs are like your basics, and that's going to be half your life, right? Like how you spend that time with those basic needs is like probably more important to you than maybe your career or like anything else that you do. So make sure you get those right if you have the opportunity to do that, right? And that's kind of the approach that I've been taking. And I recognize the need to like, because one of my concerns was, okay, like what if I get complacent and lazy and don't do anything? But I feel like I have those bases covered. I've developed a pretty good sense of myself, like my story, who I am, where I come from, kind of, and where I want to go. And like now I can start going and kind of not have to fall down every 5-10 meters after like a quick sprint. So yeah, I feel a lot of like optimism looking ahead for like the next year at least.
Sorry. Yeah, I remember us talking, I think in third year, end of third year, fourth year, when we got close again. We had these like resurgent phases, and at that time there were some rough patches, right?
Yeah.
And I was too. But I remember because you were talking about, you were wondering, you were asking me too, like, why do I feel like this? Why am I like this? I remember that. You were you were very tired a lot of the times. You were struggling to stay awake and to stay focused. And through these months, you've been like experimenting, learning more, and trying to figure that out. And now you're at a point in your life where you prioritize. Basically, you're being kind to yourself. You're taking care of yourself, right? And then putting everything else, what you can do after, comes as a consequence of your basic needs being fulfilled. So one of the things that I'm having issues with is that a lot of times I do focus on myself and meeting those needs, but then a lot of times I don't feel satisfied with that. And I feel like it's a problem of misdiagnosis. I think there are some things that I'm not properly uh, able to address because I think I have one problem when it's another problem. So, for example, the other day I was feeling very tired, very, I guess, just depressed in general. And I thought it was because I just had a long day and because I had spent so much time emotionally engaged with what I was doing during the day, which was talking to people and going to lecture and things like that. It turns out, in retrospect, that night I was just feeling lonely for some reason. I had talked to a lot of people that day, but I didn't feel like I really connected to anyone, and I felt like I didn't have my daily social needs met. And so I remember that night I just told myself, you know what, I'm just going to sleep it off, and it's going to be fine in the morning. And when I woke up in the morning, nothing had changed. And I remember just lying in bed, took my phone out, started, looking through social medias and other medias, and it made me feel worse because I hadn't addressed that initial need. So maybe a question to you is, how do you improve that diagnosis aspect? How do you really identify what's going on, and how do you stop yourself from doing a misdiagnosis or lying to yourself, essentially?
Yeah, like the self-diagnosis problem is like it's one of the most difficult things. I'm getting a little feedback, so it's hard to.
Okay.
Okay.
That?
Thank you. Is okay. Yeah, it's much better. Oh no, it's coming back. Could you mute on your end?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so the diagnosis problem. It's so hard because it feels like if you're watching someone else and if you could observe yourself from a third person point of view, then like you imagine it'd be pretty easy to recognize, or maybe it might be easier to recognize like the patterns of behaviors or like actions that like that person is going through. Example, like if I could see like a version of myself, but just in third person, maybe when like June comes through the door and he's like kind of lying down like that and like his like eyelids are like half drooped, and he doesn't want to do anything, but like he just wants to go upstairs and do tutorial prep, and he can't focus. Like maybe that's a sign that like June is either tired or lonely or like very hungry. It's like one of those three. Maybe I can't like provide a differential right away. I'll need some more like observations. But like that'd be a pretty like those would be like the top three like diagnoses, right? Most common, high yield. But the thing is like if you're living first person life, like those are very hard to detect when they're happening. For you, it's just like all automatic reactions that happen, and like um, until it gets like maybe spirals out of control a little bit more, you don't recognize that as a problem, maybe. So I think one of the solutions to develop a better differential, like on yourself and on your like mental state, um, is to get more connected to your body. Uh, and what I mean by that is it's kind of like the yeah, it's kind of like Parmjeet's body scans. Like it's very funny, like for us who's been through Alzheimer's, but like that I think is a very important exercise in terms of body, how you feel is such a rich source of data, and if you really listen and pay attention to it and are in tune with it, then you can basically learn how to navigate your needs. It's like we're built on the exact same circuitry as like animals, right? And they seem
Lobsters.
to have lobsters, not lobsters, well like mammals, like you'll we're
Oh,
very close with, right?
yeah.
Um, Animals for the most part have a good relationship with like what their instincts tell them, what their bodies tell them, and they act immediately, right? For the most case. Birds, animals, they poop whenever, wherever they want to. They can like feed themselves. They can like cuddle with their like pack and or support, and those are very instinctual things. But the weird thing about humans is that like we've kind of learned to delay gratification, and while that's been like a big blessing, that's also a big curse because like okay, you could take a poop now, or you can actually like use your prefrontal cortex to like inhibit those needs for like another hour, and then do it because some other priority is like getting in the way. So like we've kind of gotten really good at inhibiting our lower needs and kind of inhibiting like kind of the senses and the messages that our body, the rest of our body is sending to our brain, or that's at least how I conceptualize it. So I think like just playing things like basketball and like being in tune with your body that way, or if you want to do like a meditative exercise, if that like works for you, I think there's a lot of different ways to kind of connect with how your body is feeling, and learning what that message should be translated to in terms of like actions or language. So that's one thought I had about that.
It's interesting. And like I want to add to that delay of gratification idea because I think we've also been like we've been cultured, especially people like us who are, I guess, on the high functioning side, where we have to consider. Well, we basically have to stop feeling these needs in order to do bigger things to get work done, and
Yeah.
like even the education system is much like that in the sense that you're forced to sit in a classroom for X amount of time and like you're really not encouraged to go out and fulfill your needs during that time. You got to sit there and you got to do your work. You got to get educated, and then that's the day. So of course, I think we've been trained to ignore our senses like that. And I have a little bit of doubt with the body scan because it feels like it only targets your senses, like
Uh-huh.
your basic senses like touch or like proprioception or whatever you call it. But how does that translate into being able to diagnose things like loneliness or something more complex, like maybe you have a certain anxiety and it's very complicated. It's wound around certain memories or it's triggered by different things like that. That becomes a very complicated topic. Like there's got to be a better way to work through that and unravel that. And maybe it's just a part of having a dialogue, or expressing it in words, making it palpable, making it operationalized in some way. I remember I was talking to a friend today. He was telling me like, consider how girls get through things. Like
Yeah.
a lot of girls have like girlfriends, right? And they just talk about their problems to each other, and then like they gossip or they like shoot the
Mm-hmm.
shit essentially, um, and they get through life that way. And for maybe like some guys, maybe a lot of guys, I wouldn't know, like they don't have that sort of outlet. Or at least I know that I personally don't really have that outlet, and
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been searching for that. But there's no one that I can just be like, hey, like I'm having this problem. I don't really know what's going on, but I'm just gonna ramble and see where that takes me. Like that's, to me, is looked down on, or that's frowned upon. I should be, I should keep that in. I should figure that out for myself, and so it piles up. So very classic, I think, mental health presentation here, where you're bottling things up, you're repressing them, so you never figure out what's wrong with you.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, but on that last point, yes, some of your problems are because there's something wrong with you and because you're not responding to them adequately. But like to give ourselves credit, like I think there's just a lot of things that are fucked up about the way we live now. So like humans like living in isolated rooms and isolated houses in anonymous neighborhoods in anonymous cities where you have no connection to like anything or anyone or any part of the story or culture. Like I'm going off here.
Slow down.
That look, like one way to put this would be like that's essentially torture for human beings. Like that's like the way we've structured the way we live and act in the world is like incredibly distorted. And so like one of the big problems with that is you need to commute in order to see and connect with people. So like imagine in terms of activation energy, like that's a lot of activation energy for like two people to get together, or like even three or four or five, right? If have social circle.
You cut out a bit there. Still cutting. Are you still with us, June? Man, I wanted to hear this rant. This was gonna be a good rant. I could feel it. I have this sense now. I've talked with June so many times that I know when his rants are gonna be good. Let's see if we can get him back online here. Oh, there
And,
you go. Hello, welcome back.
and I'm back. Where did I cut off?
Uh, at the very beginning.
Okay. At the very beginning, was that so?
After you said
Uh-huh.
it's a fucked up way to live,
Yeah.
you know.
So it's an extremely distorted and fucked up way to live because human beings have always lived with their families and or extended families in villages or towns where people used to, for better or worse, see the same people most of the times, like be connected through some sort of cultural norms, language, ways of interaction, and maybe religious views or beliefs, and all those other rich elements of culture that we didn't even know we needed, that didn't know we were fulfilling some of our most fundamental drives. So we've kind of created over the past maybe 100, 200 years with the Industrial Revolution, this kind of siloed world where you're living in cities and neighborhoods with anonymous neighbors and anonymous people that you see walking everywhere. And kind of any sense of community or in group has been deteriorating. I think if I were to give like a diagnosis on the state of the culture, uh, and so I think a large part of the problem of loneliness, I think there's a huge epidemic here. Um, I don't know if I've told you about this study before, but there was a survey on one of the survey questions that were asked to American, um, yeah, a lot of American people, and this was a longitudinal study. I think they compared 1970 responses to something like 2000 responses. So the mean answer for the question, how many people in your life do you feel like you can connect with and share your deepest problems with? In 1970, the mean answer was 3. In 2000, I'm not sure if I'm getting the dates quite right, but that's around the time. In 2000, the mean response to that question was 0. Like 0. I have no people that I can confide in and share my deepest feelings with. So like we might not realize it because we're university students and we're in this bubble and we are constantly interacting. But I think social isolation and loneliness is a huge problem, and especially for men. And I think there's some data to suggest that too. So a lot of men seem to be, let's say, um, less likely to keep in touch with their friends and peers over time, and less likely to seek those kind of social behaviors in the same way that women do. And yeah, I think that is, I think you've correctly identified a big problem there. So, and I don't know if this part got cut out too, but there's so much activation energy that's involved in seeing people because we kind of live in this kind of Cartesian grid world where you can go just like put your pin anywhere on the Google Maps and you can go live there, you can go work there, you can live anywhere in the world. And so people do, like people move very far away from each other, like we have automobiles and things like that. And so the amount of energy, like actual energy that you need to bring people together, like let's say like me, you, Angus, and Deeksha, Trisha, like we're living like hundreds of kilometers apart. And if we want to get together once, like we'll have to expend the same amount of energy that would have kept like what Stone Age towns alive for a year, let's say. Just the amount of like fossil fuels and money and time, just imagine. Like, so barriers are high. The structures we've built aren't conducive to social what cohesion. It's like it's no wonder that we feel lonely. Like no wonder we feel disconnected, and no wonder that like this distorted view of like that we get of the world through social media is like ripping people apart and like getting them to villainize each other. So like that was a big rant, but that's all to say that some of the struggles that we're going up against are, are are through forces that are just way beyond us at the moment.
That's a good rant.
Yeah.
I was telling the audience that it was going to be a good rant, and it turned into a good rant. When you cut out, you can watch it later.
Okay.
I felt it coming. I think that's a good analysis. I really do, and the issue is that it's considered progressive, right? We think we're moving forward and we're modernizing, and we also think that technology is connecting us. I mean, it is right here, right? Used appropriately, it
Yes,
is bringing
yeah,
a lot of people together. But at the same time, it isn't. And just for the reasons you said. Um, yeah, so I was thinking about this the other day as well, and I could talk a little bit about this sort of experience that I put on myself a couple days back. One of the topics was, how do I better connect with people? So um, I I Facebook messaged you this a couple days ago. I don't remember. I just told you I'm staying up. So I
yeah,
decided to just do an all-nighter for no reason really, other than to basically sort myself out, I guess. Um, Clean my room, and then thought about a lot of things. Something
yeah.
was calling me, compelling me. But one of the things I thought about, and I put it in this book, um, is how to better connect with people. And I've heard this a million times, and the idea is that you have to make yourself vulnerable. And I don't like that word vulnerable because it implies that you're becoming weak by letting yourself be open to other people.
Mhm,
Um, but it's more so, I think it's starting a conversation, or it's starting a dialogue, and it's sharing something about yourself so that other people could relate to it. And that's something that I think a lot of people don't do nowadays. I'm surprised at how poorly we do it, especially in medical school. Excuse me, where we're supposed to be taught to be healers and people who are members of the community and who can form relationships that are healthy and supportive. But a lot of the times, I feel like medical students aren't very good at forming connections with other medical students. Like, a lot of them are sort of zoned in on their goals and doing what they need to do, that they don't take the time to relate with one another and to share in this experience together. Um, and it always, like, we always divert it to like having a social. We just like, okay, like, we're not being social enough, so let's just have a party, and that suffices. Like, we'll just have a end of block party, and that'll meet our criteria for being social with one another. I don't think that's the right approach. It's definitely not the right approach. um, and I don't know how we can make it so without being artificial, so that we can have more of these conversations with each other and engage in them more often, and also have people who are willing to do that champion that, like, take initiative. um, I go to lectures sometimes, like, from time to time, and those are really the only times that I have to talk with most of my class, because that's when all of us congregate. And when I see how people are interacting with one another, of course it's very cliquey. Everyone sits in the same place every day, and that's fine. But I see so many more people not talking to anyone. And there's a lot of people who are sitting alone, or who are sitting with other people but are like on their laptops doing something else, and reading up on something, or preparing for their next presentation or something like that. And to me, that's kind of sad. And I don't see the interactions outside of that, right? Maybe people are hanging out after class. I almost doubt it, because a lot of times when I ask people to chill, or things like that, they always say, I have to study, etc., etc.
mhm.
So I, this was kind of rambling a little bit, but I think there's something to be said about prioritizing social time, and not just parties, not just these rigid events, or these catch-all events that are supposed to fulfill some kind of purpose like that. But you know, we need to keep talking, and we need to keep up these conversations. And this is why I love having this every week, right? With you, and I feel like I can be honest and open about it. And yeah, this is also very therapeutic too,
Mhm.
right? And it benefits the both of us. So I don't know, what actions can we take.
Yeah,
It's a tough one.
yeah. No, I've been thinking about that, that question a lot too. So I wanna run a kind of experiment on you. So And so there's this dude. His name is Matuf Khalid. What can you tell me about him? Just like guesses.
Matuf Khalid.
Yeah.
I think he's Middle Eastern,
Okay.
just judging by the name. Um,
Which part of the Middle East?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Maybe
What's the weather like there?
it's probably hot.
All year round?
Sure.
Okay. All right.
I have no clue what country. I don't
Uh-huh.
know what part of. I don't know if the name is very specific to certain region or certain language.
What kind of language do you think he speaks?
Arabic.
How about religion?
Well, the classic is Muslim.
And what color might his skin be?
Brown.
Okay. What kind of interests do you think he has?
Um, Matuf sounds like he's into martial arts,
Okay.
specifically like MMA.
Uh-huh.
He also he's a fan of music. He likes that rap. You know,
He likes rap.
he likes rap. He also likes the Raptors.
Okay. All
Big
right.
sports guy.
And what kind of food do you think he enjoys from like his culture or his background?
Um, I can't really say
Uh-huh.
because I'm not familiar with too much of the food of that background, that
Uh-huh.
culture. But I think he enjoys foods that fill him up and make him feel the comfort foods. I think he's a fan of comfort foods.
Okay. All right. And now I want you to tell me more about there's this other dude. His name is Jae Sung Lee.
Ah,
Yeah.
yes.
So,
Jae Sung Lee.
yeah. So can you tell me just by his name? Maybe I'll give you his age too. Like he's 23. Like what could you like guess about him?
I think he's Korean. He's definitely Korean.
Uh,
Jae Sung is um, a little less masculine.
okay.
Um, I don't know why. Maybe I'm thinking K-pop.
All right.
There's a bit of like femininity, like the makeup and all that in K-pop. So there's a bit of
All right.
that
All
in
right.
J-Sub. Um, what else would you like to know?
What kind of food does he like?
He likes. Well, I mean, if he's Korean, he probably likes spicy food. But Jae Sung doesn't like spicy food.
All right. All right.
That's his thing. He doesn't like spicy food, but he likes Chinese food. He
Name me
likes
some Korean or Chinese foods.
yes.
Just name me some.
Oh, name. 탕수육, which is
Okay.
like orange
Yeah.
chicken kind of thing.
Yeah. And Jason's like, okay, yeah.
He likes jjajangmyeon.
Oh yeah. Jason loves jjajangmyeon.
Yeah, he likes
Yeah.
jjajangmyeon. I don't know where this is going.
Or what do you think his religion might be?
Jae-sung is statistically probably Catholic,
Mm-hmm.
Christian,
Mm-hmm.
but he's recently had a existential crisis and is feeling a little more agnostic nowadays. He's
Okay.
questioning his upbringing a little bit, his church teachings.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll stop running the experiment.
Thanks.
Um, but Matuf, who is modeled off someone I met at MacMed, is from Pakistan, and um, to be honest, like I don't have a good answer to all those questions too. Like, what kind of food does he like? What kind of foods or traditions are there from his culture? What is his relationship with his parents and family like? What kind of things do they do? They had that weird holiday like a day ago. Like, do I have any idea what that is? Or like, he says he's from Pakistan, But like, where is Pakistan? Like, do I even know the capital of Pakistan? Do I even know what it's like to be there? Right? And then I think of a Jae-sung, like, Jae-sung sounds like a cool dude. He probably has like Korean parents. Maybe, like you said, like maybe he has a K-pop appearance. Like he has, like those Korean style and aesthetics. He's statistically like Christian or Catholic, but reliably those two are pretty good choices to go to. You know what his like relationship with his family is like, because like you're Korean and he's Korean. Of course you know. Um, and just the point of this experiment is to say like, even though we can say all we want about us being in this kind of utopian multicultural society, and like we learn about everyone's cultures and blah blah blah, like the truth is like I have no idea what it is like or to be like Matuf, like not no idea but significantly less of an idea than I do for Jason. And this can apply across like, hey, what if they're of the different gender? Like, what if they immigrated here at like age 15 versus like age 2? Like there are so many different factors, and you're not getting only this with only one culture, but like hundreds of cultures, hundreds of different nations from around the world, and you just have like zero grasp on. It's not because we're like like ignorant or uneducated. Like no, I might say we might be some of the most well educated and maybe not as ignorant people like within the country, or let's hope at least. But we're still struggling. This is so damn hard. And when I think about culture, it's a set of evolved traditions and responses that we've maintained in order to solve these kind of nitty-gritty social problems. It's like, what kind of food should we eat together? How do we like organize ourselves and our time like with these holidays and with our religious rituals? What kind of things like do we generally believe in and agree on? And like those are all the problems that have been solved by culture. And when you have different cultures, like they don't quite mash all the time. You don't quite understand the working details of every, you know, everyone's ways of life and how they like to do things. And I do think that's a big impediment in terms of like just getting to know people. Not that like I'm not saying that it's like very easy to get to know people like within your own culture too. Like that's difficult, but like that activation energy is lowered because you have those things that you can grasp onto. Um, and like, to put it bluntly, like I have like I don't know any black people. I have zero black friends, right? And like I would love to get to know them. Like I'm sure like there's more to like black culture than just what I see on hip hop, what hip hop artists do, or like what I see on TV. Like, but like what's my way in, right? Can I walk into a black church and be like, hey, like I want to learn about black people. Like, can you take me in and like let me live with you for a while? Although that would be like a great experiment. Like there are no easy ways of like even talking about this issue even, or like recognizing it as an issue. Or the alternative is some people do recognize it as an issue, but they're very like what ethnocentric about it, and like that's no good. And like you know where that can lead. So like everyone has like a very visceral allergy against it, and like oh like you're talking about like race in that way. Like are you saying that people should just only live in their own cultures? Like no, but we need to recognize that there's a problem that having all these mishmash of cultures together can bring. And this is adding to the complication of our already isolated world, right? So like that's just social problem stacked on top of social problem on top of social problem. So it's very complex.
Hard to deal with. Yeah. Next week, I'll be bringing my guest friend Io. You
Okay.
can talk to him about any questions that you have.
Yeah.
But I feel like this is probably a good place to end off. Always with an open-ended question. How do we address this issue? Perhaps our audience can chime in if they have any ideas. But thanks as always. Thanks for listening. And we'll all see you next week.
Okay, bye.
Goodbye.